Pumpkin time is over. You're ready to get into the thick of things. I'm Anthony.
I'm Damon.
I'm David.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Jim.
We are broadcasting live from the Excelsior State University. This is issue 134 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Each and every week we meet here to talk about comics. This week's show is action-packed. We have a club discussion on Ghostbusters Year 1, Number 1. So it's a prequel issue for us because we read 2 and 3, but Number 1 was delayed for several months pre-COVID-19. So completely unrelated to that. So we're going to have a club discussion on that. We're going to jump over to weekly reviews and talk about the comics that we've been reading, both new and old, as well as jumping over to the letters page, in which it's a new month here. So that means it's Jacob's birthday battle, and he chose Batman versus Iron Man. So we will discuss who will win in that round. And then over in the news, we will discuss the Marvel and DC preview picks for the upcoming order to be released in maybe, 2020. We'll see. Okay, so let's kick it off here with Ghostbusters Year 1, Issue Number 1. This one is focusing on Winston Zeddemore. So out of the people here, is it myself and Damon that have read this? I think so.
Yeah.
Just so I know.
I'm trying to think. I'm wondering if I remember. I might remember a little bit more about it. Like I said, I kind of paged through, but now I'm going, did I read the thing? And I'm just, it's been a weird week for me. So.
Yeah, mostly for my sake of just knowing who I'm, how much I say and allow time for other people. So here is the setup for this series. We've talked about some of the other issues. Each issue is focusing on a different Ghostbuster, as we have Rebecca Morales, who is an independent author who is contracted by a small New York publishing house to write an in-depth and official book about the boys in gray after their triumph over the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in Manhattan's Upper West Side. And the other issues, we've followed the other characters, but we are going to jump to issue number 1, kicking it off with Winston Zeddemore. This issue deals with the first recruited member after the initial team had set up, and this is the first one that came in to apply. And as we see in the movie, we do jump into that scene a little bit, but overall this issue is him sitting down with Rebecca, who is going to interview him, and he's talking about his past life. He is a Marine, an ex-Marine, but he corrects her and says he's a Marine and he's always a Marine. Then he talks about his how he got to basically apply for the job of being a Ghostbuster. So it is dealing with that. It's dealing with his very brief training, which is some of the comedy in this issue. And it also deals with the first official mission that Winston jumps into that we did not see on camera. So that is overall what this issue is about. I will jump in real quick to mention that it was great to see Lewis again. Saw him briefly in another issue, I think. So I remember saying I wish we could get a Lewis-centric issue. But this one here, a real small scene where he's, giving a free tip about Rebecca going to interview these Ghostbusters, and he has mentioned, we should go for coffee, but then you're buying. Then you can save the receipt, because it's a write-off. So he's given, a tax tip to the interviewer. But that was one little moment that I really like, because anytime we see Lewis, it's Lewis. That's one moment I wanted to highlight. Damon, was there anything that you wanted to touch on?
I really enjoyed the replay, basically, or from the movie of the interview. When he goes to hire for Ghostbusters, and his famous line, "If there's a steady paycheck involved, I'll believe anything you say." I was really glad to see that in there, and you get a little bit more of his personality and his background in this issue. I mean, even though he's one of the 4 Ghostbusters in the movie, he was kind of like in the background. He didn't have a lot of big screen time, and they didn't give too much of his backstory or even talk about him. And this is his chance to this is the chance to learn more about him and his history and his attitude and his characteristics, and he seemed a lot of fun.
Yeah, he had talked about, being a Marine, and there was one day when he woke up and just he goes, it just wasn't my calling anymore. And he was thinking about going back home to Michigan, which I could be mistaken, but I'm trying to think if he's from Michigan originally, the actor, if he's from there or not. But that sounded like it was familiar, like I've heard him talk about Michigan before. But eventually he finds himself to the Ghostbusters, and he gets to that little moment that you just recapped. That segues into a little comedy here as he's talking about his training session, which is simply spending about 15 minutes shooting lasers at pumpkins. And Ray is very impressed by that, and real quick. But what's funny is that Ray keeps moving him on through the trials and through this the training. And Winston's like, I don't think, we should be moving along this quick, especially for someone being a Marine. He goes, that's nowhere near enough training for a weapon like this. But Ray's just like, oh, you got it. And they just keep moving to the next exercise. So it's kind of funny just how quick that, they talking about the trap and all that kind of stuff. And they just kind of throw them right into it because they get a call, which leads into the action portion of the issue. Going to the Excelsior State University, as you heard at the top of the show. They go there because there is rumors that the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe is haunting the campus, and simply the students just want to study in peace. So there's a whole action sequence of coming up to the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe. And there are some creepy moments. I like the balance that happens in Ghostbusters where, you can, like the library scene in the opening of the movie, where you can have a lot of good comedy, but then, some real legit scares and scary images and things like that. So this issue, I think, really brings that balance that we saw in the movies. So yeah, that scene was pretty intense. Anything to add about that one at all?
It's funny. He's the newest member of the team, but out of the four, he seems to be the bravest.
Yeah.
The others are like, well, if you're afraid, you don't get your deposit back for that jumpsuit. And he's like, he's the first one running into the room to go after the ghosts. And so it's just funny that he's the bravest of the four.
He is a Marine.
Yep.
Yeah, he's got a great line, which I want to see if I can find real quick. Yeah, here we go. He goes, you're right, I am afraid. But if you ain't afraid of a dangerous situation, you're not taking it seriously enough. So let's get serious. But yeah, after they're chasing the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe, they come across a new creature that is floating, this little kind of like a werewolf beast type of character. So that kind of jumps into there. But they figured, since Edgar Allan Poe has left the school, even though they didn't catch him, they call that a win because they were hired to get rid of the ghost out of the school. And they're like, well, we did it. So, yeah. That would be a cool thing to bring up into the new movie, that the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe is still out there. And then now Paul Rudd's got to go get it or something. So.
You were talking about the training you received. I was just thinking, who hasn't had a job like that where you get the 15-minute training on everything, and it's like, okay, you got it.
It's funny you say that because I'm knowing that exists. Whenever I train people at my job, I always just have a 2-week plan, and I've got certain tasks on each day, and I have them watch me for a while until I let them do it, and then the next day I'm kind of a helicopter parent as I'm kind of letting them on their own, and then on the third day I'm off doing my own thing, and then I go and check up on them. And so it's kind of funny that, you say that because that's usually how it is. And you would think with working with this equipment that doesn't exist up until catching ghosts, you think they would be a little more careful practicing and going in there, but no.
Well, as far as we know, he's had more training on it than any of them.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any of that.
Yeah, that is true.
Well, they invented it, so.
Well,
But
and
yeah, it was really entertaining.
definitely nice to get a little bit more background on Winston, because you don't, in a lot of ways, when especially looking at the first movie, it's kind of like, well, we've got these three guys, and you know what, we really need a fourth guy. I don't know what to do. Let's just bring in a fourth guy, and that's it. And nobody really knows anything about Winston. There's nothing that really stands out about Winston. If you watch Stranger Things, and the kids are going as the Ghostbusters for Halloween, and nobody wanted to be Winston. It's because, there's really nothing that anybody knows about Winston. Nobody thinks, yeah, Winston's the guy that I want to be. But Winston really could have been. I mean, he was the Marine. He could have been like the really, like, yeah, kind of gung-ho Ghostbuster, really kick-ass guy. But they didn't really do anything with it, because otherwise, yeah, he could have been the guy that everybody wanted to be.
Don't ask me how I knew this, but yeah, apparently Ernie Hudson was born in Michigan. I don't know why. Like when I heard his name, I just always thought of him as a Michigan guy. Maybe it was on Comic Book Men, because I know he was on an episode of that, and I know that maybe was they interviewed or something like that. But so yeah, they threw his Michigan background into the character as well. So
and he does a lot of cons too. So at some point when there were cons again, that aren't online cons, there's always a good chance of being able to meet him at a con, because he kind of does the convention circuit. Out of all those guys, he's the one that you're most likely to actually be able to meet.
Funny, in that issue of Comic Book Men, no one even remembered that he was in Ghostbusters. Every kid who tried to sell a Ghostbusters comic book to didn't recognize him or even know who Winston Zeddemore was. But I got a question now. The last panel of the story is the Raven stalking Winston.
Yeah.
And then, it's to be continued, because the Raven survived. I don't recall seeing the Raven in issues 2 or 3.
So maybe in the fourth one, we'll see a little full circle.
I don't know. I'm just bringing that up to see what your thoughts it might be.
Yeah, I did see that, and there was, I probably thought about it for a second, but, then I forgot about it until you mentioned it. But, yeah, we'll see once. Maybe it was a perfect timing that we got issue 1 when we did, because the next issue we get, whenever that may be, maybe we'll get a little maybe we wouldn't have remembered the Raven as easy. So.
And if we don't get the Raven in number 4, maybe it's a setup. Maybe it's something that they're holding on to for Ghostbusters Year 1 Part 2.
All right. And then when you said about Ernie Hudson doing cons, that is a perfect segue. I actually have Ernie Hudson here. No, he just walked out. So I had a bunch.
I was waiting for you to pull out an Ernie Muppet, or
Anthony's got a con in his living room right now.
I had a bunch of Twinkies and stuff in the green room, and so he was, that's where he is. So.
And here's Bill Murray. Oh wait, he's locked up in the cellar.
All right.
It's funny you mentioned locking people up in a cellar and talking about Edgar Allan Poe. Speaking of, also, you may have just resold a book, right? I bought that because it was a club pick and just to read it with you guys. But now that I know Edgar Allan Poe's in it, I'm like, that could be worthwhile. Anyway, Ghostbusters Year 1, number 1.
It's a brief appearance but it is a very good, creepy appearance. So. All right.
That's kind.
All right, then that will do it for our club discussion. We're going to move on to the weekly reviews. For those watching on video, this is the moment in between the recording segments, the very exciting moments.
Oh yeah, action-packed, far more action-packed
BTS.
than other time in the podcast.
A lot of our budget went to those clicking sounds you hear in the background.
That is right. Okay, we are recording again, and I'll do the intro, and then I will hand it over to Katie and then Jim and then myself for the lineup, and then we'll go around as normal. So, okay, here we go. Welcome to the weekly reviews section. We're going to go around the table here, around my table, and then around your tables, and blah, blah, blah. And we are going to talk about the issues that we've been reading. Let's kick it off over with Katie.
All right. Thank you. Lovely lineup there. So today I'm actually doing a bit of a follow-up read. I brought you this book at about the same time last year. So I am bringing Star Wars Epic Collection, again from Marvel, The New Republic Volume 1. Last year I told you about some really cool Mara Jade stories in here, and I enjoyed reading them again. But I didn't read the second half of the book because there were some other stories that I wanted to read before getting to those, namely Shadows of the Empire. So Shadows of the Empire is a novel and video game that fills in some time between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Pretty popular with a lot of people. And in this New Republic Volume 1, we get kind of a denouement to that story. It's called Shadows of the Empire Evolution. And the main character in that is Guri. And Guri is a human replica droid, so a really, really advanced android. Looks like a human, trained to be the ultimate weapon. You wouldn't know if she was an android if you didn't know that about her. She's a kind of a side character in Shadows of the Empire, but this story, we see what happens to her afterwards. And she has decided that she doesn't want to be an assassin anymore. She doesn't want to have anything to do with her old life and wants to be reprogrammed. And we see her go and do that and see how strands of her old life working as an enforcer get brought back into play and how she counters that. And then ultimately how she feels about getting reprogrammed. I do want to point out it was voluntary. No one forced her to do it. It was her choice because she wanted a better life. And that was pretty cool. I liked seeing that. It's kind of a reference on Guri. I would compare her maybe to Asimov's Positronic Man. So that might be a good comparison of rather than just souped up C-3PO. Goodness, that sounds horrifying. Some other cool stories in there from the Star Wars Tales line, which I like a lot. I think they're really funny. I like the kind of idea that they're just giving them to artists and writers to have a good time. Don't worry about canon. But there's enough substance to them that you can use them to fill in your own headcanons and say, well, maybe this could have happened. But overall, they're fun cartoons. I liked them a lot. And then there were some stories about some former henchmen of Jabba the Hutt's and what does life mean for them now that Tatooine's biggest crime boss is no more. And even a Boba Fett story. And some people who are claiming to be Boba Fett. Could be important for season 2 of The Mandalorian. But overall, I really liked this volume. I read it digitally this time. I would pay money to own this one, like this one that I want a physical copy to have on my shelf. So that, once again, is New Republic Volume 1 from the Star Wars Epic Collect line.
I'm right there with you. I would love to have the physical copy.
Mm-hmm.
I read the original Shadows of the Empire, and I want to read the follow-up, which is in there. And Mara Jade is one of my favorite characters from the Thrawn trilogy. So,
Me too.
Some of the other books that she's in, so I'd love to read her story. Unfortunately, Volume 1 that you read digitally is out of print, and that's one of the few Star Wars Epic collections fetching big bucks on the second-hand market.
Oh, well, you won't be able to own it, but if you do want to read it physically, the library has a copy and you can get it for free. Well, cool.
Amazon has it for free if you're a Prime member.
That's true, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually exactly how I read it. I noticed that last month, and in April, a whole bunch of the Epic collections were free, so I grabbed those and downloaded them. Normally, when they're not big ticket items on Amazon, they sell for like $40. So pretty reasonable considering each volume has like 2 or 3 big story arcs in it, and then a whole bunch of like smaller ones. So pretty reasonable price. Sounds like we like a lot of the same EU characters, Damon. We should definitely hang out and jam about that sometime, because yeah, I'm always down for more Mara Jade and Thrawn stories.
Speaking of Shadows of the Empire, I just had to pull out the N64 copy of that game, which I love.
Nice. Oh my God, that is so cool.
So I'm going to put it into the podcast right now so we could all play it.
Float off.
All
Yeah,
right.
let's do it.
Get the book to go with it, and you'll have everything.
The
Perfect.
book is pretty good. I got my emotional support lightsaber.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think we're all ready. Jim and David, where's your Star Wars stuff?
You know,
In that closet.
somewhere.
Okay. We will move on to the next one. Jim?
Okay, I have Critical Role, Vox Machina Origins, Series 2, Number 6, the finale. Let's see, there we go.
All
This
right.
cover was especially cool. This was a different artist than they had used before. His name is Hunter Banyan, excuse me. And yeah, I really enjoyed this cover. This is really nice. And like I said, this is the finale to the story. And the cool part of this, we finally get the entire Vox Machina party all together. Last issue, if you remember me talking about it, which was like how many months ago now, they did meet Percy, but only a few of them met Percy. Now the whole group, as it gets together, they were able to rescue Grog, which you knew had to happen because 3 years of stories happened, after that. And they defeated the Lich Lord that was trying to inhabit Grog's body. So it was a very, the whole story has been really well done. It's written by, directed by Matt Mercer, who is a dungeon master for Critical Role, but the book itself was written by Jody Hauser, who is an incredible comic book writer. She is very prolific, and she is personally a Critical Role fan. She has actually, spent time on the set while the game was being played. So she is that close to the group and knows it very well. So she did an excellent job on this second series. The most exciting part for me was the very last page of the story. Right in the bottom here, it says, am I getting on camera? No, there we go.
To be continued in
Vox Machina Origins Series
3.
3.
Which, as far as I can tell, has never been announced before this.
That's exciting that it happens in there then.
The cast has not talked about it. I follow many of them on social media. I have not heard anything.
There's myself and Jody Hauser. By
Jody, okay. Yeah, cool. And the definitely has not been in any of the catalogs so far. So yes, that is a good. For me, it was very exciting to see that.
Yeah, they did that recently with Peter Milligan and Mike Allred's Ecstatics, where they had a giant-sized Ecstatics, and on the last page was announcing the Excellence, which is a series that's going to hopefully be coming out later this year. But like you had said with yours, there was like nobody had talked about it. There was no other news. It was literally once you got to the last page, you're like, there's going to be more.
And then after reading that, I did a search online and still couldn't find anything. So.
Oh. Well-kept secret.
Yep.
But now we're going to tell everybody. Everyone's going to hear about it now because of the Crimson Cowl.
So get writing, Jody.
Remember, everybody, you heard it here second.
Okay. All right, we are going to move on to the next one, which I was very excited to get in the mail because it is a Kickstarter that I backed a while ago. It is a series called Like Father, Like Daughter. I got the trade paperback, and either they threw it in or I forgot that included it. But there is an extra, bonus comic. I just realized that there's 2 of them here. But there's issue 5, so it looks like they gave me a trade and then a single issue of the next story. This is Like Father, Like Daughter. It's about a teenage girl whose father left her at a young age to become a full-time superhero. She has to deal with seeing her father everywhere and the world loving him while she views him in his true colors as a man who abandoned his true responsibilities. I found out about this comic through the writer and the creator, which is Kat Calamia. She is a YouTuber for comic books. If anyone had seen her, she's known as Comic Uno on YouTube. She's been doing this for quite some time as a comic book critic. She does weekly episodes, sometimes a couple times a week, but she does the reviews. She reads so many comics. I thought I read a lot of comics, and then I met her. And she just reads a crazy ton. She reviews a ton of them. And then now she's a writer of one. She has been doing these through Kickstarter, doing individual issues, funding it. And then they did a trade paperback version. And once this showed up in the mail, I saw a new tweet from her that she's got like the next issues up as a Kickstarter. So I wanted to go through and read this and hopefully back the rest of it. But yeah, this is a real fun series here. This is taking a lot of your superhero tropes. You have a guy named the Invulnerable. He is her father. He is the superhero. He's like a Superman Flash combo in a way as far as power sets goes. He is the world's only superhero. He is a celebrity. Everyone's talking about him at school. And Casey is the main girl here, his daughter that he had abandoned at a young age. I think she was like 7 or 8 or 9, somewhere around there. She didn't really remember too much about him, so maybe it was like 7 or so. But she does remember that he left, and it's her and her mom are the ones that have been taking care of the household since, and they have to you get the impression that the mom just pretty much has kind of just eliminated him. She's pretty quick to get rid of him in the discussion whenever she kind of brings it up. And this first issue is kind of the setup for the series, is her dealing with the fact of wondering if her powers, if the power set that she has in the series, if it's part of the genetics, if it's something that could be handed down, because as the title suggests, like father, like daughter. So you see a moment in that first issue where she's starts to question that on if she has some abilities and if that is a direct tie to that or not. So yeah, that's kind of your setup for the series. Yeah, I really dug it. There's some good humor in there. Like I said, some classic superhero tropes, some like making fun of it. There's a good moment where there's a training session where her friend kind of wants to test this out and seeing if she does have powers and what she can do. And she's like, well, let's go to the rooftop. Let's have you jump from one building to another. And she's like, just like the really good Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, not the bad one or something. And it's just kind of funny just throwing in that little reference, because once she was doing the rooftop, immediately I just think, oh, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And then the next panel, they reference exactly that. So it's very fun like that. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It has a lot of potential. I'm excited to read the rest of it. Read the first couple here just to kind of get going. There is a comic, I don't know if it's a YouTube, and it's probably a YouTube channel, but there's a YouTube called Comic Duo, in which 2 characters here are kind of like newscasters, and they're talking about the Invulnerable and his arch nemesis and like all of the stuff involving the world's only superhero. And what's cool is that the one girl definitely looks like Kat. This is kind of what she looks like, and I'm sure that was definitely on purpose, unless the artist brought in that little extra charm, being like, you know what, we should draw her in there, because that is how Catherine came to jump into this now profession. It was really cool. A couple years ago at a Chicago con, I'm standing in line, and you'll get the people that hand out buttons or business cards or coupons saying, hey, stop by our booth, booth 300 and, raffle prize, obviously just drawing attention, killing time while you're just sitting there waiting for the doors to open. And somebody did that, and I've been to so many of them, and I'm like, all right, yep, cool. I'll look at it, see what's up. And all of a sudden I look, and it was Kat. I'm like, well, hey, I'm like Comic Uno, and she's like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'm like, I watched, I'm a subscriber, so it's kind of fun just to be standing in line, and all of a sudden she's just there, promoting her stuff and everything. So that was kind of cool. So if you want some awesome comic book reviews in addition to the Crimson Cowl Comic Book Club, check out Comic Uno, and she has a partnership with the DC Universe as well, and she's doing some stuff on there, and she's really blown up, and so it's cool to see her take her lifelong passion of reading comics, and now she's making comics. So that is Like Father, Like Daughter. Check it out on Kickstarter. Damon?
This week, there's actually, the new issue is actually on Kickstarter too. But this week I decided to dig into La Muerta Lives, Volume 1. It's a small hardcover. It contains the first 3 issues. It's from Coffin Comics. I get a lot of Lady Death stuff from them. And this was En Hell Witch, and this is one of their other series I wanted to check out. And La Muerta is the story of Maria Diaz, a U.S. soldier returning from a tour of duty in Afghanistan to be reunited with her family. Her brother has fallen in with the Savalas, a death-worshipping crime cartel led by the nefarious Mama Z. When they see the family celebrating, they believe they have ripped them off. Maria's family is murdered in cold blood. She wakes out of a coma to find her family dead and gone. She seeks justice from the police, but she finds none. They are all in league with the crime cult. Daring the impossible, Maria, aided by the mysterious Faustino, decides to avenge her family and send the Savalas to hell, even at the cost of her own humanity. This, to me, is basically like the female version of the Punisher.
Yeah, based on the cover, that looks pretty accurate.
Yep, she wears the, because it's they go to Mexico, and they always dress like that down there for that one festival. For the life of me, I can't think of it. Dia de los Muertos. Yeah, something. Yeah. This was a fun read. It goes back and forth. You hear a lot of the you read a lot of the Mexican slang words and swear words. But it was fun. I really can't go too much into it because it kind of will spoil it. The first 2 issues kind of cover the story arc that I read in the synopsis. Her going against the cartel for revenge against her family. It was good. It was violent. But they seemed to kind of rush it along. They could have easily paced this out, make some of the kills last a little longer, and get at least 3 or 4 issues out of it. But it kind of felt rushed, just 2 issues. The 3rd issue started a new story arc, and of course it had to end on a cliffhanger. And so I was waiting for the next hardcover, but only 4 and 5 are out. Issue 6 is currently a Kickstarter campaign, so I might just bite the bullet, and I like doing the Kickstarter for Coffin Comics. I might pick up the Kickstarter version for 6 because 6 has a real cool, each issue they do like a homage cover, and for 6 they have the Desperado movie poster homage cover. So I don't know if you've seen that with Antonio Banderas with the black behind him, and he's holding the shotgun up to his head. That's what the homage cover for the new issue of La Muerta is.
That's pretty cool.
So I'll have to pick that up and then try to find the issues 4 and 5 somewhere so I can read the whole story. And whenever they get around to releasing the hardcover, I'll pick it up to go with my collection. But if you're a fan of the Punisher and you'd like to, get a little south of the border taste added to it, I'd recommend La Muerta.
Yeah, I don't think I know anybody that likes the Punisher.
I know. It's a shame he's not here.
Oh, you know what? I know someone who likes oh no, he just likes puns. Yeah, that would be Eric.
Yeah, he just loves puns. Yeah, puns. That's about it.
Yeah, he gets really excited about anything with a pun in it.
Cool. All right, let's move over to a title I'm very curious from, because when you look at the title, it doesn't look like it's a David comic. So
That's right. I thought I'd throw something a little different in today.
Yeah.
For my first pick, just something I came across that I thought was pretty interesting. It's actually not a comic at all.
Okay.
Little backstory here and how this came up. My wife, Tammy, and I have been, trying some new beers and stuff like that. And one of her coworkers recommended one. So we went to the liquor store and decided to check it out. And that beer is called Zombie Dust. Now, the added bonus to finding this and getting to try it and whatever is the artwork on the bottles and the packaging. And let me just read, not the Surgeon General's warning. It's I think it's on the other side. Oh, here we go. All right. The intensely hopped and gushing undead pale ale will be one's only respite after the zombie apocalypse. Created with our marvelous friends in the comic industry. Art by Tim Seeley.
Oh.
So, I thought that was pretty interesting, and thought we're not doing an Under the Cowl this week due to lack of time. Where would have been great to talk about beer and things like that. Normally we would have done. So let me show you a better picture of this, other than the bottle. And that is on the package for it. And so this is some Tim Seeley artwork.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then they have like the negative version on. See if I can get this side to stick out a little bit.
There we go.
On that one, which is pretty cool as well.
That's what store did you get that
at? We got this at Jeff's Spirits on Main.
Okay.
So, we were told we could find it there. Went over, and actually, they didn't have it like out in the cooler or anything. We were looking and couldn't find it, and so one of the people came over to assist us, and so Tammy asked, do you have this? A friend of ours recommended it and said that you guys carried it here. He knew what it was familiar with it, and then he starts looking around. And I always love it when you go to a store and you're like, because you can't find something, you ask, and they're like, oh yeah, we have that. And then they start looking all over the place where you've already just looked. So he goes up and he asks the guy up front, who also was familiar with it and knew that they had some, but all that they had out was gone. So he actually went and back and dug out a case of it and pulled out a 6-pack for us. And so up until he pulled it out, I had no idea. And I'm like, wow, that's a really interesting artwork. And then upon closer inspection, I found out why it was such interesting artwork. Of course, the zombie dude on here can't decide if he wants to be Spider-Man or Thor, but yeah, it's cool. Brought it home. David saw it right away, and he's like checking out the artwork, and I told him who it was, and he thought the name was familiar, but he first thought Tim Sale.
Yeah.
Now Tim Sale and Tim Seeley both have done Batman, so he quick looked it up and he's like, oh yeah, I am familiar with his work. But I thought it was really cool to come across this, without knowing anything about this, without knowing who did it, to see it and have that catch your attention, and then realize that it's somebody from the comic industry that's doing packaging for beer. And it makes me wonder, because there's a lot of beers out there that have some really cool and out there and different artwork on them. It's almost like beer packaging has become like this new art form. So you can find some of this stuff at regular places like Piggly Wiggly, I'm sure, has some things, but there's a lot of beers like this that you're probably not going to find just anywhere. And Anthony's probably going to, talk to some people and whatever and get some Tim Seeley artwork at the pig.
Yeah, I definitely need to get that because I have a perfect way to display it. So a couple years ago, I got the zombie wine bottle holder, which looks pretty ridiculous here. And I had gotten it, and I'm like, well, I don't drink wine. And, I did put a quart bottle of milk in there once because I'm like, oh, I drink a lot of milk. And but now that bottle in there is going to look pretty awesome. So I definitely
this would be the perfect bottle.
Yeah.
So
in
the drinker and you don't want to get a fresh bottle, we have a couple bottles. So.
Well, I am willing to. I'll drink beer from time to time, so I do want to go and try to pick some up as well. And in the meantime, since I didn't have a bottle, going through some old stuff, I made this hot dog in art class, this clay hot dog. So I've kept the hot dog in there the whole time. So yep, just a zombie eating a hot dog, and wash it down with some zombie dust.
I just want to ask, how did it taste?
It was good actually. I'm trying to remember which one. It tasted a lot like another beer that we just tried, but toned down a little bit. But it's good. I've actually learned that as I'm getting a little older and my tastes are changing, there's a lot of beers that in my younger days I would have hated that now I'm really enjoying. So.
Yeah, I literally had zombie dust on my hands because of that thing. So.
Yeah, when you drink a beer that's called zombie dust, you're really hoping that it doesn't taste like zombie dust. But not a problem with this one.
And how would you?
Well, that was definitely.
Was that?
That was. Go ahead.
How would you describe the flavor?
Oh God, now I'm gonna sound like a wine connoisseur or something. It had a little bit of a bitterness to it, but not recently. Some of the beers that we've tasted, we had one. God, if we were talking beers, I'd pull out bottles and stuff and show you. This one, there was one that we had that was so bitter we could not get the bitter taste out of our mouths. They say that like salt is good to counteract bitterness. I literally put salt in my mouth because I was like, maybe that'll work, and brushed my teeth. It was so bitter that even the next day, you could still, there was this bitter taste in my mouth, and it was horrible. And so a couple other beers, including this one, when I initially got that bitterness, there's some concern, but this one, there was it didn't have a bitter aftertaste. It was like that quick little bit at first, and then it was gone. So it has a lot of flavor to it, which is nice. That's one thing that we've been trying to find stuff with flavor, but not stuff that just tastes like really pronounced horrible flavors. So I don't know. There's not really something that I could pick out and whatever. Like I've had salt. There's some beers that you pick out like a citrusy flavor, or a lot of citrusy flavored beers tend to taste like grapefruit, which unless you're a fan of grapefruit, I don't know why you'd want one of those citrusy flavored beers. This wasn't like that either. So I don't know. I'm not somebody that can sit here and, oh yes, it had a peachy
a hint of this and
So.
All right. Well, that was a surprising review that I did not expect on this issue. We will move on to the next. So, Katie, any beer to talk about?
I don't, but that's a really curious line of questioning that I think maybe we can prepare for in the future and do a comics-themed food and beverage section. That'd be pretty cool, but not today. Today, I have another Star Wars Epic collection. It's The Empire, Volume 1. And this is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if I've read a few of these stories previously, and maybe I just didn't appreciate them because of what was going on at whatever moment in that life. But I have really liked this so far. So it is set days to months after the end of Revenge of the Sith. So Darth Vader is brand new to his armor, and he is mad. He is on fire with anger, and he is letting everyone know it.
He's already on fire.
Yeah, right. He's just keeping it going. That was his aesthetic that year, I guess. Sidetrack, but it always cracks me up when I see comics where Vader is doing anything with lava or volcanoes or fire. I always kind of chuckle at those a little bit. So there's a whole bunch of Darth Vader stories in here. We get to see him, as he was meant to be seen as a Sith Lord and a really powerful former Jedi. There's a really cool one where his memories of Padme, his wife, are being manipulated. And we get to see some of how he reacts to that and his guilt and his anger at himself for, causing Padme's demise. And then we also get to see what happens to people throughout the galaxy as the war is over. Like, some people are really in support of it. Other people are saying, no, the Jedi couldn't possibly have done what you said they did, or at least not all of them. And so we end up seeing the lives and stories of some war refugees, including former Jedi, and what do they make of their lives now that the world wants them dead. So some of the stories in there are from the Purge line, where they sadly are going after people that they think could be enemies. So some of them are members of the military, some are Jedi, some are civilians. We have some stories in there from what becomes the Dark Times line, which is a fairly long-running line from Dark Horse that talks a lot about former Jedi and what do they do, and in what ways do they continue to show their Jedi values in a world that doesn't care about them. There's a couple from the Dark Times line that I did find unsettling. So, but with a title like Dark Times, I guess that's what you're in for. Overall, another great volume. It's very timely, although it is fiction, and I do want to stress that I know these stories are fake, they're not real. It is very timely for what we're seeing in the world now, and how do we think about that? How do we as individuals respond? What do we do as a society? Certainly very big questions about government overreach. That was a message that I really got from it, is what's the line, and is it something that comes over us in a wave, or does it come in little bits? And I guess every individual can draw what they want from a story, so there's always everyone's perspective on that. Again, this is one I got from Amazon, from their Prime Reading line, so I did not pay extra for it. But it sounds like, and I did not really realize this till Damon started educating me about it, it sounds like these collections are more valuable than what I realized. So I'm always a reader first when it comes to comics, but now I might have to start buying more of these when I see them, because otherwise they'll just be gone. But yeah, so that is Star Wars Epic Collection, The Empire, Volume 1. Really great if you want some awesome Darth Vader stories.
Excellent. All right, let's move over to Jim.
All right. I have a new series from one of my more favorite horror writers, Cullen Bunn, and this is Rogue Planet #1. And let's see. There we go. There. Now you see it.
Cool.
This is a limited run, I believe. It's going to be 5. I don't recall off the top of my head, but it is not a full run, which is what he usually does. He does, shorter stories like that. This starts out on this planet with this weird idol thing that looks like crystals forming an altar of body parts.
Been there.
I think that's the Zombie Dust Brewery.
That's what made me think of it, yeah. And then you see some aliens talking, and they're talking about how the stars and the gods put the stars there to guide them. It's like a mother and father, or father and child, or whatever it is, in front of that altar.
Like father, like daughter.
Yeah, something like that. And then a little bit different from that story, the father ends up sacrificing the child.
Yeah.
From there, it switches over to a spaceship, and we see a crew of salvagers who have detected a signal, and they're about to go out and try to salvage a lost ship. And they come across this signal coming from a rogue planet, a planet that has slipped away from its orbit and is just drifting in space. They end up landing on the planet after a rough landing, and there's a weird atmosphere that's breathable, but it's still strange. They got a weird glow. They check it out. They find it's kind of a junkyard, and you see those same crystals that we saw at the beginning jutting up and down through all these wrecked spaceships on the surface. As they are exploring, weird stuff starts to happen, and apparently the planet comes to life.
Mm.
And these weird tentacles start coming out, and basically they find this weird writing, and they get scared, and it leaves it as a big cliffhanger of what's going to happen next and what has already happened before.
So yeah, it looks like a book with some aliens, and I just happen to have this alien here. Be good.
That's a nice, cute alien. This one doesn't seem to be quite so cute.
Oh, very different. Okay.
Here's number 2.
Hmm. Oh, cool. So yeah, another. This is what.
Yeah, but yeah, it is really creepy, which is what Cullen Bunn does very well.
Cullen Bunn done well this time, right?
Bunn done well, yeah. A well done Bunn.
Yep, this is his 75th series just this year. So, all right, we will kick it off to the next title to talk about some more Star Wars. I have a brand new number 1, which is Dr. Aphra. New crew, new mission. I'm going to add who dis. With the Rebel Alliance back on the run after their defeat at the Battle of Hoth, it's never been a more dangerous time for outlaws, scoundrels, and the errant rogue archaeologists to make their way in the galaxy. But after a string of bad luck and near escapes, Dr. Aphra is back on the job. She's been keeping a low profile, jobs are scarce, and credits scarcer. But the promise of a score of a lifetime is a chance too good for her to pass up. So yeah, this is the new starting point for Dr. Aphra. I was bummed to see the last series end, but was very happy to see the new number 1 issued, advertised shortly after. So yeah, this I was trying to read this thinking if this would be a good jump on point as an overall number 1. I think there's definitely a lot of action here. There's some recognizable scenarios and creatures and things like that. So I think Star Wars fans, if they just jumped into here, for the most part, I think they could follow it. There might just be a lot of some backstory isn't really covered in here too much. A lot of new characters and stuff. So I think it might serve pretty well for someone who has never read Dr. Aphra. But yeah, you see her getting a new crew, all surrounding around a mission for these rings that apparently grant you eternal life. So that is the overall mission of this issue. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see how long she'll be with these new people, because if you know Dr. Aphra, that for as quick as she is to join up with somebody, she will just be as quick to get rid of them, even at the cost of their lives or cost of her treasures. Whatever she needs to do, she's usually thinking about herself first. But you do get a little hints of her past that they were dealing with in the previous series. But this whole issue is about whether or not this new team will be trustworthy or if they can trust in Dr. Aphra. But yeah, this is a character I really adore. I like it. A lot of kind of interweaving into the Star Wars universe, into the original trilogy era. So it's kind of cool to like see some of this stuff, and when you rewatch the original movies, kind of thinking about all of the comics and the novels that have come before that are just kind of picturing all of this stuff is happening just over here where you can't see on this side of the camera. But yeah, this is a character I hope to see. We've talked about it before, but I hope to see in a live action series pop up in a Disney Plus or a movie or something like that. So, but yeah.
Anthony, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are BT and 000 in there?
That is a great question. So you do not see them on the cover.
Okay.
You do see Black Chrysanthemum, however you say that.
Mm-hmm.
You see a new little droid down in the corner, so they kind of
But
tease
is
you.
he evil?
I'll just kind of leave that for the readers. But
Okay.
to answer your question, for two very entertaining characters from the Dr. Aphra series, I will reveal that they are nowhere to be found in this first issue, but hopefully that will just lead to a bigger reveal down the road. Because, yeah, I was anticipating them, got a little worried when I didn't see them on the cover because you don't recognize, over half of the faces on here. But hopefully that just means they have a plan for them down the road. So.
Interesting. Well, thank you for fueling my curiosity. I appreciate your help.
Yep, and the other character names, just because they do have a guide here, I'm assuming they're all new, so they're probably not going to mean anything, and I probably won't be able to pronounce them, but you have Detta Yad, you have Dr. Eustacia Oka, you've got Just Lucky, you have the droid TA418, and then you have Ronan Tag. So yeah, like I said, these are all brand new characters. Fun issue. Check it out. Let's move over to David for our next one.
All right. Going back to the older comics, I pulled out Action Comics number 464. It's from 1976, the publication date of October 1976. It's always fun to look at a comic like this, that's, DC Comics, whatever, but it still says on the inside, published monthly by National Periodical Publications. A lot of people recognize, even on an older comic, some of the credits. Story by Carrie Bates. And that's actually not a writer that I'm familiar with. Not that I can think of, probably read other stuff. Art, Kurt Swan, and Tex Blaisdell. Kurt Swan is a name that very familiar with. And editing, Julius Schwartz. This is one of those comics where you look at the cover and you think the whole thing is going to be Superman fighting whoever this pile driver guy is here on the front, who's spraying some green stuff out of his head. But it's actually not. He barely fights this guy. It opens with him fighting the guy. But the name of the story is Superman, I'm going to rerun your life. Rerun your life. So really the interesting that goes on, he quickly, first couple of pages, defeats Pile Driver. And then he covers back at his job. In this era, Clark was actually a news anchor rather than just a reporter. And he's covering a story. It's a very familiar sounding story. And let me just read this here. What began as a night out for Mr. and Mrs. Charles Spencer and their young son Brad ended in an attempted mugging and the shooting deaths of the boy's parents at about 10 o'clock last night. Police apprehended the alleged killer identified as 27-year-old Charles Bolton of Larchville moments after the shots were fired. Blah, 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 go on, Okay, so we're building up this new story about this young boy witnessing the death of his parents in a mugging gone wrong. Sounds a little familiar, like I've heard of that somewhere, right?
Did the report mention pearls at all? Is this the second week we've talked about pearls now?
It did not mention pearls. I'm looking to see if there's pearls on the ground. There should be. And one of these days, because I've got it and I got to reread some of the stuff on it. Now, of course, this sounds like Batman. And I did look at the original origin story from Batman's first appearance, where they first say his origin. Looking at those images, there are not pearls scattered all over the ground. The very first one. So the image of the pearls, I think that's something that came later as the story was retold again and again and again. But Clark does mention that the story reminds him of the what happened to Bruce Wayne, which is funny because Clark goes to talk to the kid who has escaped from the place where he's being kept by taking and fashioning a makeshift batarang and escaping through the window. So, and this is the kid who just witnessed his parents being killed. So a little bit later, after a brief re-encounter with Pile Driver, who escapes out of the police van and very briefly tries to make an escape, but is beaten rather quickly by Superman again. We get to a Hostess, a Twinkies advertisement with Aquaman, and then we flip over to another familiar sounding story where Superman goes to this laboratory where he's told of a scientist who is in an accident wherein he's covered in chemicals as he's electrified by a lightning bolt. And then this scientist kind of disappears. And of course, Superman's thinking, wow, that sounds familiar. Sounds a lot like the origin of the Flash. That's what happened to Barry Allen. Maybe it's because of the Hostess thing. Then he's going across water and stuff, and I keep expecting to see something that's like, oh, and this is the origin of Aquaman, but that never happens. I probably just kind of got that in my head. So as Superman's racing around, he thinks this can't be just a coincidence. So that there's two accidents or whatever that happen right away that are both very similar to origins. And of course, not only is he thinking, hey, this happened to Barry Allen, it's impossible that it happened a second time. But wait, it already happened a second time to Wally West. So he's kind of curious as to what's going on. And then he finally meets up with these two young lads who are claiming to actually be Superman and the Flash.
Okay.
That have had to relive their origins and are now like younger versions of themselves. And of course, that's about all we get of the story. And I really have to look and see if I have the conclusion to the story or more of it. It kind of drives me nuts. And looking through these old comic books, I still enjoy them, but there's too many of these that, I'd rather jump in the middle of the story and get the ending than to have ones like this where like I get the beginning and no ending.
Wouldn't it be crazy with all the comic books you have to go out and buy that one?
Yeah. Now the last one of these that I talked about, where it ended on a cliffhanger, and I didn't have the other one. I was wrong. I actually did have the next one. Okay, which was great. I'm like, oh, now I can find out how this ends, right?
Yeah.
So I go through it, and turns out there's another part to it and same thing happened. It ends on a cliffhanger. It still didn't conclude, and like that was such a tease.
Well, it's funny because when you said you still needed that one, I went to my Midtown order and I put it on the wish list because it wasn't in stock there. Because I'm like, oh, I might be able to pick up for a couple bucks or something, but it was on a wish list, so I'm like, well, this will probably never come in, you know. But all right, well, now we can take it off the wish list. So. But I can put this next one on, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look because all of these should be boxed up in an order, and at one point some of them got out of order, and I was going through and I was sorting and organizing. So I would really have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that I don't have 465. Now, I don't know if 465 concludes the story, or if I'm going to have the same thing happen. I find 465, and oh, now I got to get 466. So yeah, I'm going to have to go through some of these old ones and start doing what a lot of collectors do and making the list of comics that they still need, and going through and trying to find those so that they can go through and read them. But at least these backstories that they all have, you know, and it's always cool to get the backup stories in your comics. At least they all seem to be like single issue backup stories. In this case, it's got one called The Private Life of Clark Kent, where Clark is told by his boss that he has to basically chauffeur this guy from Australia who's also a news guy. He's got to chauffeur him kind of around town, show him the sights, and now this guy really is hoping that he gets a chance to see Superman. But of course he's with Clark Kent, so how does Clark, you know, get to do things as Superman when he can't get away from this guy that he's got to show the sights? So it goes through, and every time there's some emergency, like, you know, a speeding car that's going to run into this fire truck that's on its way to emergency, you know, he's got to, you know, do things like, you know, there happens to be one of those little pay telescopes on the top of this building that he's showing him the sights on, and yeah, he's like, oh, look, I see Superman, and he drops his coin in and tells him to look over there as he flies by and saves the day and gets back in time, you know, for this guy to see him. Now, luckily, at no point in one of these times, because it's kind of a similar thing every time he does it, he's like, oh, look over here. He quickly changes, goes, saves the day, comes back. You know, luckily for him, at no time does this guy look over to where Clark Kent should be and go, look, do you see him? He doesn't look back and start talking to Clark until Clark is back. But that's the backup story, is basically him going through and doing all this stuff. And for those of you that don't know, Metropolis, you know, had a gigantic, it looks like a statue of Superman, but it's actually a lighthouse. It's a Superman lighthouse that at night beams of light come out of his eyes to guide ships in safely.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun if I went to the DC Universe app and read issue 465, but it's not even on there either. So, so good luck finding it.
Yeah, it's great looking through old comics like this, and you see all the ad, and there's like all these Batman things that they're advertising here. So if you want to buy little, like the Green Arrow, little remote car and stuff like that. And you don't even get real pictures of them like you might have in ads and comics today. You know, they have like comic book art of the merchandise that they're selling. So I don't know. Are the things real or are they just comics? But you could get your Batman utility belt, you know, with the buckle and the little radio and the handcuffs and a gun. Must have represented the Golden Age Batman, where he actually shot people. So, but yeah, that's Action Comics number 464, October of '76, was it?
Yep. Okay, excellent, Jim.
All right, I believe this is the penultimate issue for the Lolo Woods, Joe Hill's Hill House line. This was a story that I was underwhelmed by originally, until this issue. It kind of really picked up the the creepiness. Before it was just a weird story about people disappearing kind of thing. It was just weird. It doesn't scare you or anything. There was an interesting relationship between two girls. Uh, uh, they were best friends. They both happened to be lesbians, but they weren't a couple. And so that was a unique relationship that they had for a small town, mining town where nothing ever happened. That was interesting there. And for them to be the main characters who all this stuff is revolving around, that was interesting. But this story really picks up the creepiness, and it's mostly done by exposition of the one character from last issue who we find out is not a little girl like she appears. She is actually a very old witch who has been around for a long, long time. And in this issue, she basically explains everything, and her explanation is creepy. It's why everything is going weird in this town is based upon what she originally tells us. We had already known that there was an abandoned resort at the top of the mountain in which this failing mining community existed. We now find out that before that was a resort, it was a sanitarium, and the people that were sent there were the women, and they were given the waters that come from a spring there, and the waters made them forget everything. And this witch met another witch in that place when she was taken there as a young girl, and together they found a way for them to bypass the forgetful nature of the waters and turn it against the rest of the town. So that's what happened here, and it sets it up for I'm hoping it's going to be a good conclusion. This issue has brought a lot of promise to the series as far as I'm concerned. I was getting it because once I started it, I didn't want to drop it, given it is only going to be 5 or 6 issues. Now I'm a little more excited to see the next one come.
Cool. All right, my last title here is a brand new #1 from Marvel. This is Black Widow, issue #1, and the description for this one here in just a second. Natasha Romanoff has been a spy almost as long as she's been alive, and she's never stopped running, whether she was working for the good guys or the bad. But Natasha's world is about to be upended. Beyond San Francisco's Golden Gate lies a mystery that only the Marvel Universe's greatest spy can solve. Don't miss the heartbreaking thrill ride of 2020. So yeah, this is the first portion of the story is just your generic action scene of just, Black Widow doing what Black Widow does. She's undercover. She's, beating up everybody in the room, her against like 12 people, jumping around, swinging around, gadgets and zip ties and swinging, blah, blah, blah. She meets up with Captain America, has a little discussion about the mission, and she eventually goes back to her house, and there's a moment where she realizes that there was an intruder in there, and somebody that kind of got the best of her as they shot some darts at her, and she goes falling out of the window. And so you would just think in the next panel, when you turn the page, she would just have a rope and swing through. But instead, we cut to 3 months later. And Natasha, now being known as Nat, is entering a construction site that she works at. And she comes in and she's talking with her coworkers, and there's just a lot of scenes happening where you're just like, okay, what's happening with Nat right now? She's caught on broadcast television on the news, in which Clint Barton and the Winter Soldier both see her, and they're just like, did you just see her? Like, well, it's got to be her, but like she would never let herself be caught on camera and something like that. So the whole issue and the kickoff of this series is dealing with this mystery on exactly what is happening with the Black Widow, and with her falling out of that building. Cut to 3 months later. There's definitely some stuff that happened between there. Is she on some kind of secret mission? She has some sort of secret life that we're kind of led to believe within the story here. But yeah, it was a real entertaining issue with having that 3-month cut, because now there's 3 months of back matter that we can cover in the upcoming issues. And the only bummer of this, as this was going to be highlighting for 2020, was going to be coming out right around the time the Black Widow movie was planned to come out in the beginning of May. They decided to temporarily put this book on pause. And it's actually, I think it sounds like it's a rare thing that this book actually exists in my hands right now. The writer Kelly Thompson, which is definitely what drew me to the title, even though I get a lot of Black Widow miniseries. But when I saw Kelly Thompson writing that character, I knew I had to get it then, no matter what. I had talked to her on Twitter because I heard some rumblings about that, and she replied saying that, right now it's going to kind of be on hold until the movie, which is currently rescheduled for November. Hoping that happens, then they can go ahead and put these out, whether they do another wave of number ones or we just jump right into number 2. I don't know, but I did get my variant cover that I had pre-ordered on this one here. So this pretty much serves as the ultimate teaser trailer to a series that will hopefully kick into gear later this year. So that was a bummer, but it definitely grabbed my attention, and I'm excited for more. I just have to wait a little longer than normal for it. So that is Black Widow number 1. If you missed out on it, stay tuned for fall, because it'll probably be out again. So yeah, that is Black Widow number 1, and that will conclude my reviews. Let's jump back over to Jim.
All right. I have Mirka Andolfo's Mercy, number 2. Second issue of this really surprisingly different vampire. This is set in the late 1800s in, I believe it's Oregon. It's the Pacific Northwest area,
Okay.
for sure. And again, in a mining town, things have gone weird in the past, and recently a new arrival to town, Lady Helene and her butler have arrived, and they've taken over this old house, and they have dismissed all the servants save one, and that one is kept around just to make it seem plausible that people are actually living in the house. I mean, the woman makes breakfast that gets thrown away just to keep up appearances.
It's a shame.
Yeah. We met in the first issue a little orphan girl who works for a artful Dodger type. She's running the orphans as a way for them to steal and bring him money. And this orphan girl finally gets to address the woman, Lady Helene, who she thinks resembles the statue that's in the town square that she thinks was her mother. There is a moment when they meet in the streets.
Oh boy.
Yes. And that does not distract the girl from thinking that the woman is her mother. She still doubles down on that assertion. So in order to keep from arousing suspicion from the town people, they take the girl in as a refugee into this house, and having set chaos in the streets when she attacked a bunch of men, the little girl was able to say it wasn't her because that was her mother. So now the people believe that, at least whether or not she's the mother or not, the people of the town believe that Lady Helene was not the one responsible. It is clearly that this is a different kind of vampire story. You can see by the picture I showed you that she's not just fangs and sucking blood. She's got something else kind of plant-like going on for her feeding method. So where this is going to go is, again, really looking forward to it, especially with this preview scene called Blood in the Snow. Remember, Mirka Andolfo was an Italian writer and artist. So I wonder about whether this was written this way, if she's that unfamiliar with American history, American culture, or it was just badly translated. Because they keep referring to people as by the title lady, not just she's a lady. They use it as a title. And there's other characters that are referred to by that title lady.
So kind of like a Lady Gaga, like a title like that.
Not quite like that, but yeah. like an English lady, How nice.
Anyways.
So I'm wondering if she is not that familiar with it, which, having written and illustrated so many American comics, I think is hard to buy in, or it was just poorly translated, or it was intentionally done that way. I'm just curious about that. I was wondering if I'd ever, it'd be nice to get a chance to talk to her and find out, why is it called? These things that just seem a little bit discongruous to an American, for our American history, doesn't seem quite right. So maybe it's part of the story, and we'll find out.
Sitting in the green room right now with Ernie Hudson is Mirka Andolfo. Oh, she left.
She's at your con too, okay?
Yep. Basement con.
Next time you're going to have to send me a ticket.
Okay.
All right, and that is my final review for this week.
All right. And that will conclude the weekly reviews. Stick around for the letters page. Okay, paused on audio. Real quick, is it a D&D week?
It is.
So I assume, do we have a hard out at 6 o'clock?
I'm out at 6 o'clock anyway because I got stuff coming out of the oven. So
David, for computer-wise? I'm not hearing you.
We seem to be having technical difficulties.
Sorry, hit the button on the mic. So
okay.
Not muted, but mic muted. So yeah, we should try to wrap up about 6 o'clock. What all do we have?
We'll just do the letters page. We'll skip the previews then. So
okay.
Did you guys? Was there actually previews for DC and Marvel put out?
Well,
there's items.
There's a Marvel section in the previews catalog that was put out. I don't believe there was a DC section even in there.
Yeah, they're doing their catalog strictly online, and they won't be part of the previews catalog anymore. So
right now they won't. Now, kind of going into the whole DC thing, the understanding from at least what Diamond put out was that during this time, they've been negotiating a new deal with DC, based on what's been going on and DC's decision to use other means to get their comics out there. So there was some negotiating going on, and it was kind of going back and forth. And then all of a sudden, when Diamond was expecting to get something back, without getting back to Diamond, DC just put out their thing saying, "Hey, we're done with Diamond." But I thought it was weird, and maybe it's because they were still negotiating, and that's why there's not the DC stuff in the previews. Maybe there not being stuff in the previews for DC had something to do with that. I don't know, but it's done now. So
All right. So yeah, we'll just skip that because time-wise, the letters page will bring us right to 6 o'clock. So
I guess it's early in the month. We could still hit previews next week when we should have a little bit more time.
yeah, and it's not that big a one anyway. So okay, recording over here. All right, here we go. Welcome to the letters page. It is the first Saturday of a brand new month, which means it's another round of Jacob's birthday battles. Once again, Jacob is not here for it. He's got a birthday, probably. June is a big birthday month. So he did send me his selection, and the battle for this month will be Batman versus Iron Man. And even though Kirby couldn't be here, he did send me his answer. So he goes, Batman, of course. Where does he get all those cool toys? He has the discipline and training. Iron Man isn't much more than a drunk with money and brains to make awesome weaponry. Without the armor, Batman would wipe the slate with him. So coming right out of the bat, that is what Kirby says, speaking of bat, with Batman. So anyone else want to dive into the ring here?
I'll second that. That I think Batman is the one that would kick some butt. He's had some experience with EMPs in the past, and all he has to do is set up a batarang with an EMP on it, hit Iron Man in the suit, and just watch him fall out of the sky. Because without that technology, Iron Man is just a rock. He won't be able to fly.
He's the Rock?
To fight.
That's a whole different battle.
That's the recasting.
Yeah.
Given the EMP, that would probably actually kill Iron Man because that's going to take care of his heart thing.
That could be. It's a fight to the death.
Yep. Yeah, the only way Iron Man could possibly get a little bit ahead was with a complete surprise attack. And he does, massive damage with the whole Iron Legion thing,
David?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Batman as well. I was actually gonna answer quickly when I heard the question. Immediately Batman. I think that Iron Man could give Batman a good run, but at the end of the day, Iron Man is just too dependent on the technology, and Batman always can find ways around things like that. So I think that Batman, in the end, is going to be the victor in any contest, between Iron Man and Batman. Now, if it was a contest of brains, then I would say, yes, probably still Batman.
Katie, do you have an answer?
I do. I'm going to go with Batman. Iron Man, actually, in terms of characters, is my favorite over Batman, but I think Batman, technology-wise, skill-wise, could do it. What really draws me to Batman is I think he's less impulsive than Iron Man. Iron Man really likes to show off. He does things when he gets angry or he feels threatened. Sometimes I feel like without really thinking about them or thinking about how his action will affect those around him. Even as we see in the first Iron Man movie, I think. So, Batman.
Very good. Yeah, I was trying to think of, you have two very similar type characters, and I thought, you know what, let's make this a tag team match, and let's throw Jarvis and Iron Man against Batman and Alfred. And when you have that dynamic in there, I think that's where Alfred is stronger than Jarvis as a backup tag team option. So I think Team Batman's probably going to win on that front. So
now here might be a different way of looking at things. What if it was actually a contest between Iron Man's ego and Batman's ego?
Ooh. And Ego the Living Planet. Let's make it a three-way.
Ooh.
But yeah, that Ego, I think, Tony would probably win in the Ego department.
I think that's tough. I mean, they both have very strong egos, and I'm really not sure who would be the victor between those two egos.
Who's Victor? Is that Von Doom?
Victor? Yes. There's another ego that would definitely give
Cyborg.
some contest.
Yeah, so a three-way tag match with Iron Man, Jarvis, and Victor Von Doom versus Batman, Alfred, and Cyborg. What a match.
And the whole battle takes place on Ego, the living planet.
Or Mogo, the Green Lantern planet.
Off into the negative zone, over in the phantom zone, whatever. So it sounds like Batman's probably going to win this round just by taking the votes from everybody here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a fun little battle to watch. But, yeah, I got to say, hands down, it's going to be Batman.
All right. Good. Next week's show, we will cover the Marvel and DC previews items in the current catalog for ordering. The catalog is rather small, so depending on what time and everything, maybe we could squeeze in the indie one, but we'll at least do the Marvel and DC. So yeah, we will cover that in next week's issue. And we will have the Batman Adventures coming out soon. Was that scheduled for next Wednesday, or did we have it on this Wednesday's order?
No, that looks like we should be getting that next Wednesday. So we'll probably be discussing that not next weekend, but the following, I would imagine. And unless everybody decides that they want to make arrangements to pick them up beforehand, get them read, and discuss Saturday.
Yeah, and my copy will be shipping a little delayed, so this will be the time when we start kind of talking about these picks that we had picked pre the pandemic, and kind of see how we would handle our club discussions from here out. But we'll do that off air and figure that out. But we will return next week with a brand new show talking about the comics. Have a letters page. Probably have a great question to answer. And yeah, that should conclude it. Maybe we'll have some more beer reviews too, because that is now part of the show. So if you have a comic-related beer, I should really get the Beer Hates Astronaut, which Ryan Brown has his God Hates Astronauts comic. Every year they do a Beer Hates Astronaut, and yeah, I can get it shipped from Chicago, but it's always, by the time I get to, I always forget about it, and then shipping costs and whatever. But now I'm inspired with the zombie dust out there. So, all right, that'll do it for this issue. This entire time, I was born into my own level of weird.
I have finally made it through an episode, remembering to unmute myself whenever I want to talk.
I survived the drunken apocalypse.
I can still hear you say, we'll never break the chain.
Mute.
To be continued.